Well, Professor Peter Ayton is a lecturer at Leeds University studying behavioural decision theory. Why do you think people run a marathon, like David, someone who's not run before?
So when you look at the stories that people tell about why they're doing it, and I mean, it's not just running a marathon, it's participation in a mass event with enormous amounts of attention and the association with sponsorship. These are all clues to, what I think probably does motivate people. I mean, the association with charity, which we heard sort of mentioned several times there, is particularly interesting when you think about, well, how much money could you raise, with the time that you spend training and participating in the marathon? I mean, I know a lot of money is raised from these events, but it's curious, I think, that a lot of charitable causes, not just the marathon, but many others, involve sort of slightly useless activities that don't provide any actual benefit. I mean, you think about, for example, the Ice Bucket Challenge, which was viral a few years ago, and, I don't know how many millions of people participated in that. And the psychology of that, I think, is very interesting because it clearly, I think, signals that there is a pursuit of a noble cause, untrammeled by any ulterior motive or any other kind of incentives. So, for example, if in other realms, if you look at what personal incentives do to people performing things like being blood donors, it actually reduces participation if you pay people to be blood donors.
So, is that so?
Yes, it interferes with the altruistic image that people like to cultivate, and indeed, quite legitimately so, I think, for that kind of activity. And something like the marathon bears some relation to that, I think.
And is a 46-year-old man trying to prove something to himself about himself?
I'm sure there are all sorts of personal motives in there as well. I mean, the psychologists tend to, obviously, it's easier to do research about the sort of generic aspects of these things. Tracking individual reasons is a little more difficult. Yes, I think we heard that. There was a sort of story about fitness, for example. It seems to me, fitness is not really an explanation for why you would want to train to run 26 miles. And often people set particular objectives for the completion. So people will have a time goal, for example. It's not just, many people, the less elite runners will just say, I want to finish. But the majority of people will have a fixed time goal. And this leads to an interesting pattern in the performance. So you imagine, of course, there's a very long tail. I think the longest marathon runner took more than 5 days to complete because he ran in a deep sea diving suit. So, understandable perhaps. But it's not a smooth curve. There are spikes in the curve of finishing times. And basically people want to finish on just below a whole number. So, for example, about 4 hours is about the average completion time in the London Marathon. But there's a big spike just before 3 hours, 59 minutes. 4 hours, 1 minute, there's a few people not present because they sped up at the point where they realised they could make that goal.
Do you have any evidence at all as to what impact this has on people's mental health? I mean, one would imagine that they feel better about themselves, as well as probably being more physically fit at the end. Is it in any way proved?
There are studies of the mental health of marathon runners, and it's actually good news. I mean, we hear a lot about sort of, depression and mental illness in sport, but marathon runners tend to have better mental health than non-runners. They score lower on things like depression and anxiety and so on. So whether that's a cause or effect, I'm not sure that's been clearly established, but people who are going to go into that activity, clearly they've got to have a certain frame of mind to contemplate that.